Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Today's event is called Feedback Culture with Fred Machado from YAGER. But before I hand over the stage to Fred, I would like to quickly introduce myself as this evening's host. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm currently based in Madrid. I'm an associate product manager at Product People. My background is in design. I started out as an industrial designer, moved into visual design at a digital consultancy agency, and finally transitioned into product management. And I've had the pleasure of working in the B2C and B2B spaces with a lot of cool companies, thanks to Product People. That was a little bit about me, but I would also like to briefly introduce what we do at Product People for those of you who might be unfamiliar with us or joining us for the first time. Our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. We manage PM work on an interim basis for our clients, and we do so by onboarding fast, aligning teams, and delivering outcomes. We have a growing product management community of over 17,000 members, where we host events such as this one to share and spread knowledge among product managers and aspiring product managers. Before we jump straight into today's presentation, we want to get to know you all a bit better and have prepared a little survey. So those of you on Zoom will have the survey pop up and you'll be able to choose your answers. And for the rest that are watching on other platforms, feel free to simply write your answer in the comments and we'll also be seeing it. So the first question is there something that everyone knows about you? Yes, no, maybe. And is there something that almost no one knows about you? So I'm pretty sure that most of us have something that's known to the wider public and some things that we keep to ourselves, but I'm curious what everybody else responds. So let's give it a little bit more time before Andre brings up the results. All right, so a lot, well, 60% answered yes to the first question and maybe, and majority answered that there's something that almost no one knows about them. And with that said, I'd love to hand over the presentation to Fred, who's Talent Acquisition Manager at YAGER, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can share your screen once you're ready and kick it off.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lisa. Let me then jump into sharing my screen. Get to this point. Let me show the video panel so I can see you. And here, let me just put into presentation mode so I have my speakers notes on. Last, let me just make sure I put this on full screen. Amazing. Can you all see my screen? Is that working?
Yep, everything's working.
Very nice. So yeah, thanks all again for this opportunity. Feedback is one of my favorite topics nowadays. I've always been studying about it, and I think not only helps us at work, but in our life in general. So yeah, today I have a little presentation to be sharing with you, and afterwards we're going to have a QA session so we can dive a little bit deeper into the topics. So to begin with, this is a quick agenda so you can see. We'll be quickly talking a little bit on the objective of the content, then how our professional relationships work when it's based on trust, how to seek for feedback, how to understand feedback, and yeah, then quick summary on what we have learned on feedback, and then a final thought for you to go through it. So yeah, but the objective of this content, I usually like to say, so self-growth mindset has a lot to do with self-awareness and continuous improvement. And ideally, we want people to know how to express themselves and understand the impact they have on others. We want people to be driven by gain insight into their strengths and weaknesses, and also be open to new ideas and willing to try new approaches that will improve themselves and their work. For that to happen, we need to build a system and culture that support often and early on formal and informal opportunities to share feedback so people can learn from them. it is important to focus on the future and not just here and now. So for us to begin, what I gonna challenge you or kindly ask you to is just take a couple of minutes to write in a piece of paper or Google Docs some feedback that you would like to give to someone. Could be someone from your team or just some random person in your life. What would you write? Take these minutes to do that, and yeah, when you finish, keep that into the side because we're gonna be revisiting that a little bit later on. So yeah, let's start then. Trusting relationships. When it comes to building strong relationships, what actually goes into that? Here's a model that we will use to discuss how I believe is a winning way to build relationships in personal and professional life. We'll dig deeper into each of these elements, but at a high level, a solid relationship has a solid foundation of trust. Think about someone you really trust. How hard is for you to engage on a feedback dynamic with them? How hard is for you to have a candid conversation about the work or what's really going on with that person? If you really trust them, I don't think it will be that hard, or at least it's easy than with someone that you don't trust. But what actually is trust? Let's try to break down into what actually goes into that. First one, credibility. Credibility is about the words that we speak. Do they carry the weight that we want? The second is reliability. And reliability is about the actions. Are you someone who does what they say that they're going to do? There's a consistency between words and your actions. And the last one is intimacy. And intimacy is about closeness. There is solid rapport there. Do you feel close to this person? Do you know them well? Into the following sessions, we will go deeper into each one of these areas, as I said. So let's start with credibility. Let's spend a moment talking about credibility. How do we establish credibility when we're not really sure what we're doing? Think for a short moment, how have you seen credibility demonstrated at work? Let's say that the delivery of a result didn't go as planned and a failure occurs. How do you think you can rebuild lost credibility? If you usually are the one who has failed, taking accountability and responsibility for the failure and then proactively asking for feedback is the way for you to regain the credibility that was lost. And if you are a leader, sometimes you will have to take responsibility for a mistake your team has made. It's usually how it goes. But on the other side, if it is someone else who has failed, try to find a way to give them feedback in a constructive way. There are very effective ways to regain credibility and avoid future mistakes or fails. One of them is actually asking for feedback when that occurs. I remember fondly a moment where when I was working in the past at a video game company called Riot Games, and I needed to engage into a feedback dynamic with our country manager. That was an exercise that he did kind of in a frequent way. And I remember that was one year that was kind of tough to doing that because actually I had some feedback to give to him, how I actually perceived him. And even though it was not comfortable in the beginning, afterwards, for sure, the result was that we had a way stronger relationship and way more trust when working together. The second one is reliability. And your word is only good as the action that follows it. A large part of building trust within your team and the community is delivering on what you say you can deliver. While we strive to follow through on everything we say, the reality is you will make mistakes and make promises you aren't able to keep. When that happens, so there will be a moment or a commitment where you will fail into just keeping that promise. Let's reflect on what you should do in the following situation. So let's say that in the last one-on-one with this person from your team, from my team, I happen to say that she could do something that was not necessarily the truth. And the thing is, you just knew that was not possible after having this conversation with the person. What would you actually say to that person? How would you kind of say that something that you said before was not necessarily true? The thing is, trust and vulnerability are intertwined. In order to learn to trust each other, individuals must allow themselves to be vulnerable with those same people. Even the simple act of believing that someone will do what they say that they will is making oneself vulnerable and open to the possibility that they may be let down. So here's a quick thing that I like to bring that is kind of a funny thing. So sometimes we open and every feeling is out there, but then when we look deep inside, there may be a small feeling that is called regret. And as more as we practice this, we will understand that this regret feeling is not necessarily something that helps us going throughout our professional lives. Well, the second part is intimacy. And intimacy doesn't mean a romantic relationship like our Vastayan friends, Zaya and Rakam. Sorry, the League of Legends reference, but I think you get the point. Intimacy is our sense of closeness we have with others. And we know a lot of people in the community are humble, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to be appreciated for what they do. Everyone wants to feel a level of self-worth. If you are an original gangster or a team leader, you need to help your direct influencees feel appreciated for what they do. But how do we do that? What are some unique ways to show appreciation for you? How someone recognized you in a meaningful way in the past? We all want to be recognized for what we contribute every day as a coworker. As a manager, recognition is so much more than paying people for more money or giving them promotions. And here are languages of appreciation and ways to build this closeness with others. First one is acts of service. And acts of service are things you may do to help them out. Maybe this could be just jumping in to help someone with a short deadline. There's also quality time that can be spent into a one-on-one outside the norm. For example, maybe you go away from the office for a lunch, or maybe you just have an extra one-on-one where you just want to get to know the person a little bit more. Another way of showing appreciation is gifts. And this could be a gift card to their favorite restaurant or a figure to their favorite treat. Do not underestimate the power of a small gift gesture. Sometimes, depending on the person, this could be very effective. Another one is words of affirmation. And maybe this one is the most common that we see out there. Words of affirmation are the verbal ways to show appreciation. When it comes to constructive feedback, we like to spend a lot of time preparing what to say. I encourage you to spend just as much time thinking through positive feedback instead of just saying, nice job. What did the person do specifically that was so awesome? It's really important for us to treat positive feedback the same way we treat constructive feedback. And last but not least, physical touch. Don't get creepy. A simple fist bump may mean a lot from someone. And as me and Lisa were talking before, depending on the culture that you come, this could be really different, right? So I'm from Brazil, by the way, and sometimes people find me kind of a hugger and someone who is showing appreciation through physical touch, of course, always in a respectful way. So at the end, everyone has their own preferences for recognition. Some like getting a shout out in front of the office, while others would prefer a thoughtful email or a handwritten card. Again, there are many ways to show appreciation. And when you show appreciation and recognize others, naturally, as a consequence, they will be closer to you. There will be more intimacy when it comes to connecting with them. So yeah, we talked about the triad, the foundations of trust. Again, credibility, reliability, intimacy. This is a simple formula that may seem simple, but it sometimes, again, just being aware of it may help you get to better results when it comes to feedback dynamics. Let's jump into seeking feedback. That is our next session. So the question that I want you to think and reflect for a bit is, why asking feedback on a frequent basis is more important than proactively giving feedback? And this is something that I like to address because I think the default that we have is, when we think about feedback, is how to give great feedback. And in my humble opinion, what I want you to have in this session is for you to first master the art of asking for feedback. And then as a consequence, of course, we will have some good stuff coming from that. So there are some behavior changes when you actively and frequently seek out for feedback. When you take the time to seek out perspectives, you immediately begin to process the trust and relationship building. By honing in on specific areas for development, you get really applicable feedback to things that you're looking. And when you seem open to receiving feedback, people are much more likely to approach you with feedback on areas that might be blind spots for you, just by the fact you seem excited to get some feedback. And last, in addition of all the above, being really and truly open to feedback requires vulnerability. That we already talked about it. This is an invaluable trait for teammates to share and can lead to some amazing outcomes in both work and personal development. So if you frequently actively seek for feedback, these are 4 behavior changes that you may expect and see coming our way. Time for a silly acronym. And yeah, always be curious. This is another point when it comes to feedback that is really important when digging deeper into these perspectives and nuances for you to work into getting better into that area. Generally consider the person's perspective and try to put yourself into their shoes, even if it is a far flying from what you currently believe or how you view the world. Your goal here is to get the full perspective. So let's try to imagine this into a situation. So let's say that in a stretch assignment, your manager requests that you make a presentation to a product team about some recent changes that we got on some of the goals that we have. Let's put that into this hypothetical situation. Only you and your manager know that one of your self-growth goals for this performance cycle is to work on your communication skills. So the passive approach, let's say you prepare the content and do the presentation. In essence, 5 perspectives exist about communication skills. One of these is your manager, and she meets with you after you give the talk to give you some feedback on your communication approach. But 2 of the other people assume the feedback they have for you is probably a one-off or not important, so they say nothing. The other 2 don't even know that you're working on your communication skills, so they aren't even paying attention to the tone and specifics of your presentation. At the end, you collect only 1 perspective in this passive approach. But yeah, we have an active approach that you can use to, again, get the best out of this feedback dynamic. You know you're about to give the talk 1 week before it happens, and you ping some of your audience to give them early access to the content that you're going to present and proactively ask for some feedback on what you're creating. You also make sure this audience before the talk knows that you want to get better at your communication skills. And after the presentation, you proactively request some feedback for them. This way, your approach will guarantee you are collecting at least 5 perspectives or even more. Again, this is maybe unconscious for you, but it's really important for us to own our development goals and to be more active when it comes to engaging into feedback dynamics. Let's get some structure about feedback now. And this is the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda. Video game references. Oops, sorry. It is divine triad that sustained all creation in the game's universe. It's based on power, courage, and wisdom. Very good traits, in fact. But when we are talking about feedback, the holy triad is a little bit different. So let's talk about it. Let's say that at work, we want to drive people's effectiveness by increasing self-awareness about performance. We can't do that unless every person receives constructive, actionable feedback. And for sure, your message will be better received if you come from the right place, having the other person's improvement in mind, so people can hear it in your message. Good and effective feedback is based on perception. And this way, we avoid getting into judgmental, biased perspectives. This is the first element of the feedback holy triad. Clarity is the second element of the feedback triforce. And we're going to practice this a bit today. So this is probably the most important session in this presentation. It's how actually obtain the perspective that you will help inform your development. You should be ready to listen or sharing essential pieces that build a complete perspective. And for that, you'll have to ask questions to understand the following: situation, action, and outcome. When it comes to situation, it's basically, when did this happen? What details will help to provide a more clear picture of this instance? Drive for details, not generalizations. However, your tone and choice of words will cement this curiosity and not an interrogation. If they don't have any context to provide, ask that they keep an eye out for this behavior to pull you aside and then tell you immediately when this happened. Again, who, where, when, what, how. These are some keywords to help you get a better perspective of the situation. When it comes to action, what did you do? What did this person see, hear? Is this something that they have seen before? I mean, is this a pattern? It's really important for us to understand what was said and what was the action involved in the whole situation that was painted before. And then last but not least, the outcome. How did this make the person feel? Or what were the ripple effects of your behaviors? What didn't you see? Or how did they feel after everything happened? Ask questions to understand how your perceived actions, is or intent made the individual feel or think in that moment. So the SAO, by the way, if you like Animes, Sword Art Online may help you remember this silly acronym. You also may know some kind of similar techniques in the market, like the STAR method. I think it's well used by LinkedIn. That is situation, task, result, action, result. But yeah, at the end of the day, I like SAO because it's a little bit simpler. But yeah, let's see how this works with an example. Hey, Fred, I perceived on today's meeting while you were presenting your part, you said at the end, sales is very operational and not as important as the other teams. That made me feel bad since I am part of the sales team and know that we worked really hard to get the results we got. S for setting, A for action, O for outcome. As you see, they are divided onto that piece of feedback. Let's see this in a different way. So there is a statement here. Last month, you seem to be lacking attention. To be honest, when it comes to situation, this is very poorly introduced. Maybe a different way for us to bring a better clarity to this is at the update meeting 2 weeks ago. This is me being specific. When it comes to action, again, the same sentence. Last month, you seem to be lacking attention, and bringing again a clear point to actions. People ask you questions 3 times and you didn't hear them, so people needed to call your attention. Also, at our last daily stand-up, a little bit more onto the setting, you needed to ask for your updates more than once. Again, you're being specific, you're stating facts, you're stating behaviors that happened. And then last but not least, the outcome for the same sentence. We could finish all of that with that made the rhythm of the meeting get down and the team lost momentum. As you see, 2 different ways, different explanations. So you are doing a good job in keeping the team focused. This is the positive way of it, right? So this is not a constructive feedback. But again, poor when it comes to clarity. On the other side of you see the example being more specific when it comes to situation, action, and outcome. So last 2 weekly project meetings, you did a good job on guiding the discussion towards most important action points, which give me clarity and security about I need to prioritize next. This also helps me be more efficient on my deliveries. You see, a simple sentence could be really more detailed. And for sure, if you do this way, you will bring way more clarity to the people that you're engaging with. Good feedback is constructive. And constructiveness is the third part of the feedback triforce. And the key here is kind of simple, but not, which is to not assume motivations. Let's quickly see this on the next slide. So let's see at this example. I know that you don't like to be bossy and micromanaging, but you need to know the tasks your team is doing and make sure that they are being completed on time and in full. Feels strange, doesn't it? I don't know. I'm not particularly a big fan of the word bossy over there because the person is assuming that someone doesn't like to behave that way. And let's agree that bossy is not the best adjective over there. Let's see on how to do this in a more constructive way without assuming motivations. 4 times during the project implementation, members of your team did not complete the task we have agreed upon on time. That made the other 2 teams getting into firefighting state for the last week. So here, I'm not assuming motivation, so I'm not risking myself into getting into a judgmental position. But again, I'm stating facts and I'm driving to improvement on our feedback conversation. So the 3 things to remember when it comes to feedback are, it's all about perception. It's important to have clarity. You can use SAO or STAR method to get there, and needs to be constructive by not assuming motivations. So yeah, let's take a quick look on what we learned about feedback so far. So yeah, seek feedback in an active way. Know how you want to improve. Reach out to your coworkers, to your peers, for their perspectives. Then engage in the feedback conversation. Draw out the details. Really try to find some actionable feedback over there. Then synthesize the feedback, analyze the information, talk through the themes with your manager, and then apply this to a personal development plan. And then follow up. How are you applying the feedback that you got? When will it be implemented? Or how can you measure the success of moving forward? And that naturally will lead you into seeking more feedback and making this kind of anytime feedback dynamic. So for a final thought of the presentation, do you remember the piece of feedback that I asked you to write after going through this presentation? Would you write it in a different way? would you rephrase it, or would you use any kind of the elements that we saw over here? One question that I really like is, what is the smallest step that you can take towards change to not feel really kind of blocked into that? So as a manager at work or not, great people expect you to provide consistent assessment, consistent feedback, also consistent investment, and consistent support. And at the core of it, you just need to fucking care. I'm sorry, the bad word, but that's the basis of good feedback. No training is going to teach you how to genuinely care for other humans. Treat your team like adults. Show them that you care, and they will assume best intent. So yeah, this is what I have prepared for you when it comes to content. And yeah, it's an adaptation to a more kind of conversation kind of talk. But yeah, I think now maybe we can jump into QA.
Thank you very much, Fred. So you can stop sharing and I can share my slides now.
Okay.
And let me try using, the SAL method now and say, Fred, in our community event this evening, I felt that you did a fantastic job in explaining all the concepts very clearly. And that will certainly be very useful for me in my job, not only with my direct teammates and coworkers, but also with my clients. So thank you very much. And now you can give me feedback on how I how I did on that.
I really appreciate the specifics, Lisa. Was there a specific part of the presentation that got you more hooked into the content?
There was a part that I've heard about before, but in a different way. So when you talked about, the 5 languages, I've heard about them before as 5 love languages. So the way we express love. So I heard about it in a different context, not in the, working context. So that was very interesting for me.
Nice. That's nice to hear.
All right. So I would like to then open up our Q&A section of our event. So you can start thinking about, the questions that you would like to ask Fred and leave them in the comments section, of the platform you're watching us from. Also, if you're on Zoom, don't be shy and raise your hand and speak up, but to give everybody a chance to think about what they'd like to ask and type out their question, I will like to use this time to give a quick overview of some of our use cases of product people and for when it's best to engage us. So this can be when you need to cover for someone as an interim product manager or product leader for parental leaves, for example, or when looking to hire someone for a permanent position, since this process might take up to 3 to 9 months. We also offer product coaching and consultancy if you want to coach your product management team and improve processes inside your organization. And last but not least, as a product discovery lead, we help you discover new initiatives and products, do user research and establish business models, or helping your team run a low or no code pilot or MVP. And we've already done this for our clients, some of which you can see on the slide, such as Zalando, Tier, Omio, OneFootball, just to name a few. And here you can see some of our B2C clients that I've just mentioned, as well as our B2B clients that we've had the great pleasure to work with. And we also receive a lot of positive feedback from our clients, some of which you can see on the slide. And looking at some of our product people stats, we have a 71% client retention. So this means clients who either choose to extend our engagement or expand their services. We have 40 product leaders and product managers in our company, 56% of whom are women. And of those, 66% are in leadership roles. And we work remotely from a lot of different countries and cities. So we have a very diverse team, as you can see. And if any of this has caught your attention and you're interested in becoming a part of our wonderful team, we have a spot for you in this corner right here. So you're most welcome to apply to any of our open positions, typing in the link you see on the screen. And we're currently looking for product managers and senior product managers. So with that said, and finally coming back to our QA, let me see if we have any questions. And while we wait, I also had a question myself. So I was wondering, how would you promote, sharing feedback in a way where people feel that they can be honest and candid without, being anonymous, because in companies, oftentimes, we have like different platforms where we feel like it's easy if you're anonymous. It's very easy to share and be honest, but once that kind of veil falls down, it's a different thing. So in your company or in companies that you've worked at, how did you kind of like promote this honesty between coworkers?
This is really good. It's really good. I think, again, I think honesty can be something when it comes to the constructive side of it that can be tricky. One thing that we've been doing at YAGER that I really value and appreciate is we have this platform that is called Small Improvements, which is a platform that everyone is connected in one way or another. And there is a way for you to be giving public praising. So I don't know, maybe some of you have already heard that is when it's good, do it publicly, that praise in front of others. When it's constructive, try to make it more individual to avoid, I don't know, just putting someone into the spot. So of course, leading by example is another thing that I truly believe that is really important. So if I were in your position, I would try to make as frequent as possible, but again, as thoughtful and as specific when it comes to praising others. So the whole company knows the kind of impact that some people are bringing into that. Again, I don't think there's a right or wrong to do it, but I seeing that a lot of people are collaborating, contributing to that may make other people feel more comfortable and when it comes to being honest. On the other side, there's also the tool of engagement surveys. So more and more companies have been doing an effort into listening the employees' perspective into different areas when it comes to their employee experience journey. It's really important for you to have frequent surveys going out, and again, addressing specific kind of areas so we can move fast and change things that may be hurting and harming the company culture or people that are part of that. So we've seen this evolving. We have many platforms that can use support doing this. And again, it could be a very useful tool in order for you to assess information and act quickly to avoid bigger damage.
Thank you very much. I mean, to share like from our product people side, we have something that I really like in our Slack is we have a rave cave where we share kudos, and this is very public. So this is everybody can see, when you're sharing something that, your teammate did, something great that happened, even, self kudos. That's also important because oftentimes I feel like we might think, might be too arrogant of me to, give myself kudos, but I think that's important. Nice. So we have a question from Sarah on LinkedIn.
Nice. Before we jump to the question, just to summarize and to add to the first question, because I think it's really valuable, is another way of you trying to create a place where it's safe for you to be honest and bring feedback is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a show and tell kind of dynamic. Back in the time. So basically it's like you presenting something to an audience and what you learned from that, or I don't know, what was the impact of that great project. Back in the times, we did kind of an inverted approach that was fail and tell. So you were making a presentation on something that failed or something that you learned or something difficult. Again, you're sharing your learning process towards that and making sure that that was not going to be used against you on any kind of career progression or promotion aspect. So another kind of dynamic that you can think on.
I think that's really awesome because it's also, makes people feel that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. And when you can talk about them, the importance of it kind of lowers. And, it's okay. We all make mistakes.
Totally. And epic failures are great opportunities for epic learnings. So we should have that in mind.
That's a good one. So coming back to our questions, we have a question from Sarah on LinkedIn, and she's asking, what do you do if someone is struggling to understand or take your feedback on a project?
Okay. So when it comes to feedback, I think one of the skills or the main competence that is being demonstrated is communication, right? And communication can be something so complex, and then there are so many traits that are part of communication. So let's I don't know, try to see a couple of them. Communication, essential part of communication is about being concise and objective. Another part of communication is about articulation, or the set of vocabulary or words that you're choosing to use there. The third part is listening. And the fourth part would be, how candid are you able to do that? So understanding that communication is something really complex, you need to try to validate with someone that you are engaging into a feedback if they clearly understood, again, what is the setting that you're bringing on that feedback that you're providing? What is the action or the behavior that you observed into that specific moment or setting? And then how that affected you. I usually say that even if we're giving feedback or if we're asking feedback, it's always about us, because it's how we are being perceived, or it's how we are perceiving someone. So try not to get into, again, a judgmental position into, hey, you are this. We are nothing. We are human beings. We may be perceived, have been perceived in the past because something that we said or something, some way we behaved, and that impacted someone else. So if someone's not understanding your feedback, be aware of how you're communicating. Make sure you're using the SAO or the STAR method to bring clarity to other people. Yeah, Nick, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. I think sometimes I completely agree with everything you've said, and you've given us lots of tools to, help land the feedback more effectively. I think despite that, sometimes people just aren't fully ready to receive constructive and critical feedback. I've worked, especially people who are more junior, they've only recently entered the world of work, and they're very used to the school model where if you did something badly, you get a lower grade and get punished in a way. So they take the feedback personally, or get defensive about it, or just get really disheartened and stressed.
Yeah.
So what would be your tips for helping people kind of embark on that journey and not just get better at asking for feedback like you talk through, but more generally receiving feedback more warmly and constructively?
That's a really good question. So what is coming to my mind right now is, if someone is getting to a position where they are reacting, or they are avoiding or not understanding what is the feedback that you're bringing, maybe there is an opportunity for you to take a step back and try to clarify on what is the objective of the feedback. Why do we engage into feedback? And we started the presentation talking about, hey, we want to build a culture that is towards self-improvement and learning. So feedback, people should be really enthusiastic about feedback, because it's someone who cares about them and want them to get better at something. So maybe trying to outline and lean out like, hey, maybe you have in your mind that these could be consequences of this feedback dynamic, and just make sure that they're not going to be the case, or again, not being promoted or being penalized because of something. Can be a hard conversation, but again, what is the intention? What is the objective of engaging into that feedback? It's basically helping them get better. And if you are able to clarify that, and again, use some of the elements to make this feedback about perception, about in a constructive way, about specifics that you have over there, I think this may make it easier when it comes to engaging with this person. And again, it's about kind of practicing and making more and more recurrent. The other thing that you could do about it is exercising on the other way. So maybe for you to give an example as a manager or as a leader or someone who is influencing this person, you will ask feedback for this person. And again, try to educate and give the example on how you expect the person should behave on receiving feedback and getting those specifics and changing and acting onto changing that possible behavior itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you.
If I might add my 2 cents here, so because I, as a designer in my past life, well, always a designer at heart, but it's very common for people to take feedback badly because they associate themselves directly with the work that they do. So I think it's very important for you to separate yourself from the work that you're doing, because you're not being criticized for who you are. It's, you're receiving feedback for your work. And I think that's very important that people understand that and they make that separation. Otherwise, it's not possible to, constructively take that feedback and implement it if you're, you take it so badly.
Yeah. And maybe if this person, again, it's kind of a pattern or it's more challenging when it comes to delivering constructive feedback, you can start by exercising on the other side. So how do you exercise all of these tools, all of these methods when it comes to giving good feedback? How do you bring specifics? How do you understand the perception? How was the impact that you brought into that? So it's easier for us to dig deeper and get to the specifics when it's a good thing. And then the person understands the whole dynamic, and then you can get into the other part that is a little bit harder. And sometimes, again, we're dealing with people, right? There are emotions involved over there. And it's okay if someone is getting to that part, because when basically someone tells that we're doing something wrong, chemically our body prepares to fight. There is a lot of chemicals and hormones and endorphins getting to your body, and you get rigid and you, again, get more in touch with your emotions. So it's okay if you perceive that person is getting to that state to just take a break, take a step, like, hey, don't worry. I see that this is really affecting you. Let's give it some time. Let's step back and let's revisit it in another moment that can be a little bit better for us to engage together.
That's true. I feel like if you can get used to giving good feedback, then, the other people around you, it will be easier when, some bad feedback comes, but because they're used to this dynamic, it's going to flow much easier. We have another question from LinkedIn. Yeah. This one comes from Alaildin. I hope I pronounced your name right. And he's asking how to effectively engage with different personality types in the workplace.
Oof. Well, I was mentioning to Lisa that the first book that I read when I came here to Berlin as a Brazilian who was always working into a cultural majority Brazilian people, it's a book called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. So that book basically outlines on how different cultures communicate, engage with feedback, and get stuff done. So of course, as leaders, it's really important for you to try to understand people's personality, and we all know that diverse teams perform better than teams that are like-minded. This is a very profound and an interesting topic. I'm not sure if there is a specific way for you to be able to do that, but if we think again on what is the formula of trust, we talked about credibility, that is what we say. We talked about reliability, that is basically following with the things that we say. It's basically walking the talk. And the third and last one is intimacy, that is about closeness. Maybe in your relationship with that person, you've been doing a great job when it comes to credibility, a great job when it comes to reliability, but not necessarily you have been investing enough time into being close to that person, into getting to know who they are. And so, yeah, maybe this investing a couple of more time into that part can help you have really the strong triad of the formula of trust. And this, as a consequence, will give you a better perspective on that personality that you need to deal with.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Andre?
Yeah, thank you, Fred, for the presentation. Just curious, what is the best and the worst feedback you've ever received?
Whew. So let's start with a not so good feedback. So when working in the past, one piece of feedback that I got was that I was too emotional, or maybe my emotions were too much for that environment. And then I started to understand, okay, what does this mean? So try to gather some specifics. Is this connected to, I don't know, talking out loud or moving my hands, or when something goes wrong is being frustrated and demonstrating that I'm being frustrated is like, I don't like this. But so after that, I tried to work on it and kind of develop this more neutral reaction to things. And then I realized that I was trying to be a different person that I actually am. So of course, I think you can tone down on something and be more empathetic on what is your audience. Even more if you are in a leadership position, if you get annoyed, this may influence and affect other team members. But I think it's also important for you to be yourself and try to be genuine. And there are people who are really more engaged and emotional, and I don't know, kind of the way I am. And so I've after some consideration applying forward, I've discovered that was feedback that I didn't necessarily needed to act on it. It was much more about the other's person perspective and how that was affecting them. Maybe the feedback that I needed to give them in advice, like, hey, maybe you were getting too much affected by my reaction or who I am or how do I look to do stuff. And yeah. And I think on the other side, really good feedback that I've been getting is we all have ups and downs. And I have a partner at home that is always remembering moments where I was perceived as great or as really good. So she makes sure that when I'm maybe in a not a good day, to remind me with specifics what stuff that I did in the past and why she appreciates so much onto those points. So I don't think it's a specific kind of feedback, but again, I'm just trying to outline here that is as important for us to invest time into engaging with positive feedback as it is on the constructive side.
That's very sweet. Thank you for ending on such a sweet note.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.